We've all been there, trying to figure out what is the best lens for the least amount of money, because preferably we want them for free, but they are crazy expensive. And then the biggest question is, how much money should I invest in a new lens, and which lens is worth my money? 2 years ago I started out with the 24-105mm lens from Canon. This is the kit version, the RF 4 to 7.1 aperture. This is the lens that I've used for the past 2 years for almost a weekly, if not a daily basis for parts of that. And it's a great piece of kit. It's relatively inexpensive and it has a lot of options to it. I don't want to go too technical because I want to keep it more based on the user friendliness and my own experience than bombarding everybody with a lot of specs, because they're out there anyway. But I do think a couple of specs are kind of important to get started. First off, the price. At the moment of filming this lens is about 400 bucks or 480 euros where I live. I don't know why it's more expensive here, but I guess it is that way. However, the kit price is around 1700 bucks, 1650 here. Don't know why that is cheaper again, but guess I'll take it. The minimum focus distance of this lens is 20 centimeters, so it's relatively versatile for indoor shooting with a thread size of 76mm, which is most common for medium format lenses basically. It weighs just short of 400 grams, which is relatively light but does pack a decent punch for the weight, and in the smallest size like this, it's around 90mm long. Just like it has been for me up until now, it's a really nice starter lens. Inexpensive, lightweight, and it gives you an incredibly versatile range of 24mm to 105, which does give you a bit of telephoto. It's not an insane zoom, but it does give you some nice compressed backgrounds and just a lot more versatility to play with. At full zoom, this lens is f7.1, which is not a lot of light, but honestly in an outdoor situation it's plenty of light still, and honestly at such a range it's kind of nice to have a lot more focus in your shots. Around f7 for inside shooting is a little bit dark, but I don't know a lot of people that actually shoot 105mm inside for non-stationary objects. It's not the best lens for wildlife photography, but go give it a shot because I'm not stopping you, and believe me, I've tried. Honestly, with those specs, just like it has been for me up until now, it's a really nice all-round starter lens with an incredibly versatile focal range. All the way down to 24mm, it gives you a lot of versatility for inside and landscape photography, and 105 is just on the edge of wildlife capabilities. It's not great for really close-up shots, but if you can get relatively close already, it's honestly not a bad bet. f7 at 24mm is quite nice for a lot of wider shots and landscape photography where you want a lot more being nice and sharp. So you might jump up to f4 anyway, even with the 2.8 or a 1.5 lens. You won't get the softest of backgrounds with an f4, but honestly it's not bad, and compared to a artificial bokeh on most phones nowadays, it's honestly nothing to complain about. Even the background here is nice and blurry, and that's shot at f4. Super easy to just throw in any bag and have it with you, so you have some large zoom capabilities to play with. It's amazing for if you don't exactly know which focal length you want, because you can obviously opt for a couple prime lenses or some narrower zoom lenses like the 16-35mm or the 70-200. It's so versatile, you basically have all those ranges covered anyway, except for like the very outer points, and it just gives you a lot to experiment with and to actually figure out what you really want and what you want to invest your money in on the long term. For that money, it can't be a perfect lens. f7.1 and f4 are relatively dark for a lot of the more fast-paced and high-action shooting. Inside shooting at darker parties or just some evening events where the lighting isn't ideal, with f4 can still get really dark and blurry quickly because you just can't get those shutter speeds high enough. And cameras nowadays are getting great with their low light uses, being able to pump your ISO all the way up to around 5,000 or 6,000 without really having any more noticeable grain, but sometimes it's just not ideal. Also, I just want to say the f4 and the f7 are not all bad, because they do give you a lot more detail when filming or taking some photos where you want a bit more in focus. I've also experienced some difficulty with the autofocus on this lens, again especially in lower light situations, which brings me to a very minor detail, but it's something that I am personally missing because I've used a lot of my dad's lenses, which had a nice button to switch from autofocus to manual focus. I know when you're spending 2,000 or 3,000 bucks on a lens, it's usually included, but I just wish they did on the smaller lenses as well. One of the things about this lens that is really cool, but honestly I'm horrible at using it, is the control ring. At the front of the lens you have where regularly your focus ring is, which can be used as a focus ring, but can also function as a control ring to bind whatever function you want to it. It's all personal preference what you want to do with it. I've personally set it to control my ISO so I can, crank my light a bit when shooting, but you can fully customize it, so it's a really cool function to have. It's just something I'm horrible at using. And finally, it's not the sharpest lens. It's not bad either, but it just feels a little soft sometimes, and when you zoom in on photos you do see a lot of the detail in there, but it feels like it's all been washed out. The best way of comparing it I've found is one of those filters for your face when you're taking a selfie on your phone and you just smooths out your skin a bit. It almost feels like this lens is doing that, but honestly that could be a personal thing again, and it's something to expect from a more affordable lens. So to sum up, is this lens still worth it in 2023? And in my opinion, definitely, but not in all cases. It's a great starter lens. That's the main reason why a lot of people, including myself, have used this as a starter lens and have probably gotten it in a kit. It has an incredibly wide range of focal lengths, and for the price it's not bad, especially knowing that the f4L is around 4 times the price. So yes, it's definitely worth it, but mainly as a kit lens, or again as a starter lens. If you have some old EF glass kicking around, I would recommend getting an EF to RF adapter and just using that for a while. It's also a great lens to just figure out what you like and what you want, because I've decided to invest in a 50mm prime lens. That is because I've noticed that a lot of my shots were around the 50mm range. So my advice is to check what you want and need from your lens, and if this one covers it, then yeah, I highly recommend it. And with that all being said, thank you very much for watching and hope to see you in the next one.